Today we'll be showcasing the installation process of our new Demon Style wide body kit for the Jeep Grand Cherokee. This kit includes the Vicrez Widebody Demon Style fenders and the Vicrez Demon Style front lip. This kit is extremely easy to assemble, and we will showcase each step along the way, starting with the wide body fenders.
What's up guys, it's Seth here with Vicrez. Today we're going to go over the fender flares, what you need to do to get them ready to install, and the installation process. So now a couple of things you're going to need to get the fender flares ready is of course the fender flares. Now they also come with some brackets. Now these are installation brackets. Now there's two pieces for the bigger part. Now these all just snap together. They're just plastic snaps that line up with each other and should just snap right into place. Now these are all labeled individually to mark which ones match up with which. You should be able to snap them on after you figured out which one goes to which. Now there's two just separate pieces. You'll have the mounting bracket with all these little slots. Now these slots will slide into these brackets right here, which hold the clips, the plastic clips that hold the fender flare to your frame of your car. Now these should just line up with each individual one, like so. They'll line up, and each one has a little clip on it. You'll want to make sure you push it down all the way and seat it properly to the other bracket that's attached to the fender flare. And after that, it should be securely mounted. It's not going to fall or go anywhere. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and install these little plastic clips. They just slot right into place. You grab it. They have these little slots in them. I don't know if you can see that very well on camera, but you just slide them right in place, and then they just slot in, and they stay there. They're not coming out. Now there's a total of 7 plastic clips for the front fender flares. Now this is for the front right side of your car. There will be a total 7 of clips that you'll need to slot in place, which will clip into place on the front side of the bumper, indicated in these tiny holes here, that those clips will just slot right into. Now another step that we went ahead and did for extra security, as well as sanding this part here. After you sand it, you want to go ahead and take some alcohol, and you want to go ahead and wipe it down, get any dust or any debris off of the fender flare before you go ahead and put your adhesive protectant on it. Now, you can get whatever brand you want. We just got some adhesive promoter. This will help promote the adhesive and make the 3M tape stick better to the fender flare, which will allow it to stick better to the vehicle. Now 3M tape should also be included in your kit. Should look like this. And we'll go ahead and apply that to the top portion of this right here, as you guys can see here. And we'll add some adhesive promoter to it as well. Now I'm just gonna show you a little bit of what that would look like. So you're gonna take any type of sandpaper that you have. Usually you use a rougher grit of sandpaper, like 450 or 500, something along the lines of that. You can go rougher, like 250 as well. Now you're just gonna take it and scuff up the surface a little bit. Make it to where it's visibly marked and scored. That way there's something for the 3M tape to stick to. And then afterwards, after you sand it, you can go ahead and clean it off with some isopropyl alcohol and a regular cleaning rag, or if you have any alcohol wipes, go ahead and clean it off with that. And then after we're gonna go ahead and add our adhesive promoter all around the edge and then lay our 3M tape down. All right, so next we're gonna go ahead and install the 3M tape on the top part of the fender flare. Now, as you guys can see here, this one is completely lined with 3M tape. It also has the bracket, which allows this piece to sit inside of it. Now, once we have the 3M tape installed on this one and everything's ready, we're gonna go ahead and peel the 3M tape off the fender flare, the top fender flare, and install the insert fender flare inside. But before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and install a layer of 3M tape along the edge here for whenever we go ahead and install it to the vehicle. That way we can go ahead and peel this strip of 3M tape and stick it onto the vehicle as we snap in these little rivets here. Now we're gonna go ahead and do that now. Before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and add some of this adhesive promoter. This will just help the 3M tape stick to the fender flare. Now you just want to do a light coat all the way around the top edge of the fender flare. That way, whenever you go in and install the 3M tape, the promoter will help it stick to the fender flare. Now this isn't a necessary step, but it is a step that will help ensure your fender flares won't come off and to help with any rattling or like hollowness noise. Now once you went ahead and prepped your surface, you can go ahead and start laying your 3M tape down. Now we're just gonna go ahead and do the top edge here. Now there's this little notch at the top. You don't wanna go over it because then your 3M tape will start hanging out whenever you go ahead and install it onto the vehicle. So you wanna make sure you line your 3M tape with that edge and stay along it and don't go over. And now, as you guys can see, the top edge of the fender flare is lined with 3M tape. Now you're pretty much ready to install the fender flares on your vehicle. But you want to go ahead and prep the surface where you're going to install the fender flares on your vehicle, as well as the surfaces on the fender flares themselves. Now this is how it should sit inside the fender flare once you're ready to install. Now I don't know if you guys can see this little black edge right here. This is that little lip you want to go ahead and follow whenever you're putting your 3M tape down. This will keep your 3M tape from seeping out and showing once you install your fender flares. Now we're gonna go ahead and prep the surface of the vehicle to go ahead and install the fender flare. Now the reason we put this top layer of 3M tape here is because it's gonna sit directly on the vehicle, and it's what we're gonna use to make sure the top part is held securely to the vehicle. Now, this piece will go on the back side of the front fender flare, and the clips here, the 7 clips you see here, will line up with these holes and snap right in place. But before we go ahead and install this, we're gonna go ahead and prep the surface of the vehicle and wipe it off with some isopropyl alcohol and a regular microfiber cloth. And then afterwards, we're gonna go ahead and peel this protective layer off the 3M tape and go ahead and install the fender flare. So we're gonna do that now. So now what you're gonna go ahead and do is take any microfiber cloth or any cleaning cloth of your choice, whatever you prefer using on your vehicle, and just spritz it with a little bit of alcohol, or if you have alcohol wipes, go ahead and use those. Now what you're gonna go ahead and do is just wipe down the surface and make sure you get any residue or dust or anything off from where you're gonna be lining up the 3M tape at. Now this will just help to make sure the adhesive sticks and that there's no dust or residue on top of the surface of the vehicle that will make the 3M tape peel off. Because remember guys, we want the 3M tape to stick to the vehicle, not what's on the vehicle. Now once you have the surface prepped, you're gonna go ahead and be ready to install your fender flare. And like I said before, we're gonna go ahead and peel this top layer of protectant off the 3M tape before we install. Now it may be a little bit difficult to get one end of the protective layer up, but we usually just use an X-Acto knife to peel one end up, and then we can go ahead and peel the rest of the protective layer off. Now just like that, you're ready to install your fender flare. Now just make sure you line it up with the little holes that are on the bumper or the front fender flare, and the little clips that we went ahead and already installed on the fender flare should just snap right in place. Once you hear it snap into place, you know it's secured, and you can go ahead and start working on the top part of the fender flare to make sure the 3M tape is sticking. Now, as you guys can see, I cleaned the whole panel of that fender. That way, I knew there was no dust or debris on the panel before I stuck the fender flare on. And this is what it should look like after you've done so. Now we're ready to install the other fender flares. Now guys, as you guys can see here, we have the inside fender flare on already. Now we're gonna go ahead and prep the surface again, because as you guys can see here, we have 3M tape on the top fender flare as well. Now we went ahead and put 2 strips along this bracket, which will connect to this piece here and this trim piece here. Now we're gonna go ahead and clean this off and prep it, make sure there's no dust or residue on the surface. That way the 3M tape can stick to the material. And as I was saying before, we went ahead and added an extra layer of 3M tape along on this bracket. That way it has more room to contact and make connection here, so it has good adhesion to the fender flare. Now it's basically the same step as the inside fender flare. We're gonna go ahead and peel off the protective layer off the 3M tape. Now on this one, there's quite a bit more 3M tape. There's one lining the edge of the bracket, as well as 2 on the bracket itself. And then 1 lining the top edge of the fender flare, and then 1 down here, because that will actually line up with the front side of your front bumper and curve around the edge on the bottom. You'll see that later on in the video. But after you have your surface prepped, you wanna go ahead and let it dry. Now don't let it dry for too long, because then dust and other debris can accumulate on the surface of the vehicle, and you'll have to clean it off again and redo the entire process. But after you clean your surfaces and prep your product, you can go ahead with the installation. Okay guys, now we're gonna go ahead and peel the protective layer off the 3M tape. And then after so, we're gonna go ahead and add some of our adhesive promoter. That way it'll help stick to the body panels of the car and the fender flares. Now we have 3 strips along the bracket edge of this fender flare. We're gonna go ahead and peel all 3 of those back at once, just to go ahead and get it out of the way. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our adhesive promoter to it. Now what the adhesive promoter does, it simply just allows us to install it on without waiting so long for the 3M tape to stick and do its job. It is not a necessary step, but if you're wanting to save time, you can go ahead and do so. Now we're just gonna add a lye layer across the top of the 3M tape. And like I said before, this will just help to promote the stickiness of the 3M tape, and that'll just allow us to do other steps in the process sooner. It is not a necessary step at all. And now we're gonna go ahead and apply some of it to our top strip and bottom strip as well. Now once we have our 3M tape properly coated, we can go ahead and install. Now the fender flare should just line up. It has this little slot or notch, whatever you want to call it, that lines up with the front bumper and slides into place. And after you have it put on, you want to make sure you add some light pressure evenly to each side of the surface to make sure the 3M tape adheres properly to the body panel. Now doesn't it look so much better already? Our SRT style fender flares really do a job of making the body panel stick out and make it look seamless. And now next, after we do our fender flares, we're gonna go ahead and start with the rims. So stay tuned and let us know what you think of the project so far. Now, as you guys can see, there were a lot of steps to come up to this point to where you see it at now. This is what it used to look like, plain and barren, barely hanging out. The wheel actually sticks out more than the body panel does. But now we have our wide body fender flares. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and get started on the rear fender flares. Now here's one of the pieces that you need to assemble the rear fender flares. and put them on the car. Now it's basically the same few steps as the front fenders. You have this bracket here that slides onto these 3 notches here, as you can see. And they'll just go over it and snap right into place. Now each one of these parts are individually labeled so you can know which one goes which. And then these just snap right into place. They're held in place by each one of these. They have a little notch in them that sits inside of a groove. And you want to make sure they're seated correctly on all 3 before you move on to the next step. After that, you're going to need 3 of these. These are just little plastic clips which hold it into the bumper, as you guys seen before whenever we were installing the front fender flares. Now we're going to go ahead and slide these in place. Now they simply just pop right into place with these little grooves. They have a little notch in them. You just slide that notch into the groove and they pop right in place. Now these 2 will be facing up and down, as you can see, and this one will be facing the other direction. And it follows the contour of the body. So this one is tilted to the side and these 2 are straight up and down. So watch which direction you're putting them in. Now this one has grooves on it to show you which way it aligns up and slides into place. Now after that, you have your air guard, and then this, all it does is there's 5 holes going along this little edge right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those slot into these 5 little grooves right here, and that'll hold the air guard in place. These also just snap in place as well. Make sure they're all the way seated, and then we can move on to the next step. Now you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver for this one, and you'll need 3 screws. You'll also get a little kit like this inside your bumper kit. Now this is all the hardware that you'll need for the vz101924 SRT kit. So remember to look for this whenever you open your box. Now inside it'll have a couple different clips, rivets, and screws. We'll need 3 of these screws for both of the small pieces for left and right side. And they'll just screw right in place, which will hold that bracket in place, just for that little extra added security. Now you don't have to tighten these down too tight. You just want to make sure they're snug. You are screwing into plastic after all, so there's no need to torque it down or anything. Just get it nice and snug to keep the piece secured. Now it might feel a little bit loose after you screwed everything down, so go ahead and make sure you push everything down one last time to make sure everything's seated correctly. And also another step that we did, just like with the front fender flares, we sanded this top edge, went ahead and added some of our adhesive promoter. And after you're done with all these steps, you're pretty much ready to go ahead and install the fender flare on the side of your car. Okay guys, now we're gonna go ahead and get started on the rear fender flares. And as you guys can see, we've already started a little bit by installing the 2 black panels, as you can see there. Now they're the same setup as the front fender flares, which we've already done. You just wanna make sure you put the mounting bracket in place and then put your rivets in place and then snap them in. And make sure they're securely snapped in place. And then next, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the upper part of the fender flares. Now we went ahead and started cleaning them off. That way we could go ahead and add this layer of 3M tape you see him applying here. Now as you guys can see here, we've applied 3M tape to the whole bottom layer of this bracket, as well as a thin strip along the top layer. Now that bottom bracket there is there for you to allow it to stick to the inside panel. Now that bracket is just held on by 3 little plastic rivets, as you guys can see there. And it should just slide and pop right in place. And then you can go ahead and start laying down your 3M tape. Now guys, before you lay down your 3M tape, you wanna make sure you prep your surface. Go ahead and sand it with like 225 sandpaper grit and prep the surface, then wipe it down with some isopropyl alcohol and any cleaning rag. Now this is an optional step, but we went ahead and added some adhesive promoter before we put the 3M tape down, just to make sure it sticks very well. And then we're gonna go ahead and add another layer to the top of it once we peel the protective layer off. That way it has good adhesion to the vehicle. Now, as you guys can see here, he's gonna go ahead and peel off the protective layer, and then he's gonna go ahead and add some adhesive promoter to the 3M tape to make it more tactile and make it stick better. Now, this is a completely optional step here, but as you guys can see here, he's adding the adhesive promoter to the 3M tape. Now, once you have everything ready, you're ready to install. And all you have to do is apply it correctly and apply even pressure onto the body panel to get good adhesion. Now, you guys want to be careful to make sure the body panels line up correctly. If it's not, you may have to take it off and redo it. Just make sure, if it's not lined up correctly, not to apply firm pressure to the body, because then the 3M tape will start to adhere to the body panel. Now, once you have it on the car, we're gonna go ahead and use some of these C-clamps to go ahead and apply pressure. We also put two more, one at the bottom and one at the very bottom, to hold the curvature onto the bumper. Now guys, we're gonna go ahead and start working on the smaller upper fender flare. As you guys can see, we have the bigger one on. Now we went ahead and applied a layer of adhesive promotion to the part that doesn't have any 3M tape on it. And we're gonna go ahead and put a layer of 3M tape down. Now, after you have all the protective layer off the 3M tape, we're gonna go ahead and add another layer of adhesive promoter to promote the 3M tape. That way it'll stick to the body panel better. Now, once you have your 3M tape on, you're ready to install. Now we're gonna go ahead and wipe down the panel with a little bit of rubbing alcohol and just a simple rag. This will help keep the area clean where the 3M tape will stick to and adhere to. Now, this will also help prevent the 3M tape from adhering to anything but the body panel, like dust or debris. Now, you want to make sure you line it up correctly before you push firmly to make the 3M tape stick. Now, you may have to open and close the door a couple times to check the body panel and the fitment to make sure it lines up with the other one. And then once you have the fit where you like it, you can go ahead and press firmly or use C-clamps to secure the fender flare onto the body panel, like we've done so here. And now, once we have the fitment where we like it, we're gonna go ahead and install our C-clamps. Or if you don't have C-clamps, you can go ahead and hold it there. Now we're gonna leave these C-clamps on overnight. That way it has a full 8 hours to go ahead and make sure the 3M tape is properly stuck to the body panel. What's up guys? We're back with another install video. Now as you guys can see, we have a front lip in front of us. This is vz101924. This is a part of the 1924 kit that we already have on our Jeep. Now as you guys can see, the wide body fender flares and everything are already installed, as well as the wide body front bumper. Once you have all of that installed, we can go ahead and start working on our front lip. And it's a fairly simple install. All you'll need is a Phillips head screwdriver and then the hardware that comes with it, which are two types of screws. Now we have a bigger set of screws and a smaller set of screws. The smaller set of screws we are going to be using for actually installing some of the parts that are to the kit. Now there's two side flare pieces as well as the guards that hold them in place, and we'll go ahead and install those with the small screws. Now there's 12 total screw points on each side for both of the hardware pieces that we'll need those small screws for. And then there's 10 screws that are allocated along the bottom here for these holes, which will actually screw into the bottom of the bumper. Those are these screws. As for that, let's go ahead and start with the install. Now guys, here's all the parts we'll need. Let's go over some of them. As you guys can see there's a couple of knobs that are sticking out of the lip. Those will actually insert into these holes allocated on these parts here. Now once they're inserted, you can go ahead and screw them down to tighten them and make sure everything fits cleanly. Now, The hardware pieces will actually be screwed on with these smaller set of screws. And then, once we actually install the lip onto the car, we'll use these bigger sets of screws. Now we're gonna go ahead and start with the install. Now, as you guys can see, Jose's taking the plastic piece, making sure to line it up properly, and it should snap right in, and then he can go ahead and start torquing everything down with the screws. Now you want to make sure the piece is set on those knobs correctly. That way whenever you torque it down, it's not uneven. Now once they're set in place, you can go ahead and use those 4 tiny screws to tighten it down. Now next, we can go ahead and start with our side skirt piece. Now this should slot in place just like the other piece, and there's a little notch that the piece should sit on, and then the tabs should pop right in place. Now you just want to make sure the piece lines up and it should slot right in place, and then you can go ahead and use 2 more screws to hold it down. Now we can go ahead and do the other side the same way. Now that's it for the assembly process. Now we can go ahead and install our new front lip onto our bumper. Now we're gonna go ahead and slot our front bottom lip in place, and then we can go ahead and start screwing everything in. Now you wanna make sure your front lip is lined up correctly with your wide body front bumper. Now there's gonna be a couple screw holes on the bottom of your front bumper that will indicate where it lines up with, and then you can go ahead and start screwing it in place. Now this may take 2 people, one to hold the lip while the other one screws it in place. Now guys, as you guys can see, our front lip is currently on the car, but not fully screwed in. I wanted to take a moment to show you what the underside looks like whenever we're screwing it in. Now, we only have 2 screws in on each side, but we're gonna go ahead and screw in the rest of the screws all the way along the bottom of the bumper. Now we're gonna go ahead and finish screwing in the rest of the screws. And I know I said before, all you'll need is a screwdriver. That is in fact true, but we're gonna go ahead and use a drill just to make the job faster and easier on us. Now we're also just making sure those screws are properly torqued down to make sure the lip doesn't go anywhere. Now last but not least, we're gonna go ahead and screw in our side pieces to our bottom lip. Now those will screw in to your fender flares on the back side, as you guys can see here. And it will sit flush with your fender flare. Now we're gonna go ahead and screw our side panels in. Now there will be 3 locations on each side where you'll need to screw it in to your fender flares. Now this will make sure it stays secure, that way it doesn't go anywhere. And then we're gonna go ahead and use a bigger screw at the bottom just to make sure everything is fitted correctly. Now once you're done, you have one side of your bottom lip installed. Now we're gonna move to the other side. It's gonna be the same process as last time. We're gonna rotate the wheel 90 degrees to give us more space. That way we can screw the screws in. And now we're gonna go ahead and screw in our other side. Now just like before, 3 screws to make sure it stays in place, and then 1 extra screw just to hold everything together. After that, you're done with your install on your new front lip. Now if you've been following along through the installation process, and you're done installing your front lip, now we can just sit back and admire.